I'm Sarah McAbee. My husband's Ronald Colton McAbee. He's a J6er. He's been incarcerated since August of 2021.
Since August of 2021?
Yes.
And what was his role? What was actually going on when he actually got arrested?
So why he got arrested?
Yeah, like what are the charges?
So he has 3 felony charges, 4 misdemeanors. He's charged with assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon. That's the biggest charge that he has.
And how long is he facing?
Well, when they arraigned him, they said that he's facing 68 years, but they gave him a plea deal for 9, but he's not going to take it. He's going to probably take it all the way to trial.
Take it all the way to trial, and that would require getting a jury pool, correct?
Yeah, so his judge won't do we've tried to ask for a bench trial, but he's in a bigger case. He's one of 9, actually. People are falling off left and right. A gentleman on his case passed away. So I think he's one of 4 that's left, and they split the case up. So he is going to go in front of a jury.
So what was going on that day that he actually was being accused of attacking a police officer? 'Cause that doesn't sound like your husband, right?
No, he's a police officer himself.
Right. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your husband before we dive into this.
He's a law enforcement officer for 7 years. He was a deputy sheriff when he was when all this went down. He was actually out. He got out of that career field not because of this, but because of everything that was going on. He was in Atlanta during the summer of love of 2020, and he was like, he's like, Sarah, this isn't what I got in for. You know, he was like, my heart to help people was just, it's still there, but how the people look at us is just so different. So he's still, and even when he got out, he struggled with getting out because those were his brothers, you know.
Yep.
Those were the people who, whenever he saw a cop, and that's who he is, right? He sees somebody in need. It doesn't matter who you are, what color you are, what political party you sit in. It doesn't matter. You're a human being that needs help, and that's what he sees. That's what he saw that day. He was at the West Terrace Tunnel where all the violence happened, and he saw an officer being dragged into the crowd, and he pokes his head around and says, "Hey, you have a man down," to the line of officers, and they did nothing. And so he went around the barrier to help this officer. As he's trying to help this officer who's literally laying like a starfish on his back, and he's trying to help this guy up. Roseanne Boylan's being beaten to the left of him, and he yells, he's like, "Stop killing that girl. Stop hitting her, stop killing her. It's on video." And he got dragged down the stairs with the officer. His foot was in between this gentleman's legs, so he couldn't get drugged, but these 2 other gentlemen pulled this officer down, and so he fell down the stairs with him. He's over top of him, like on all 4s, like protecting him. This officer is laying there for a minute, and he's laying there and he says, "Get off me, man." And my husband says, "I'm one of you. I'm trying to help you." And the officer says, "I know, help me up." And so my husband rolls him over, helps him back up the stairs, gets behind the line. Roseanne Boylan's body had already been moved. He goes and starts looking through a medical bag for supplies to give her mouth to mouth. He's looking for a pulse on her body, no pulse. But they pick her up at that point. There were 6 gentlemen that pick her up and move her back in front of the line of officers. He gets down, starts doing chest compressions before they move her off. And then he's just standing there. The crowd kind of disperses. They're yelling at the police, you know, "You just killed her. Like, this is on you." Like, and while he's standing there, you know, these people are yelling at him. When he was down with the officer, people were yelling at him, calling him a traitor. And he was like, he's telling them no, to stop hitting this. Like, this, it doesn't matter. These cops were set up that day, and he saw a cop in need, and these people were mad at his initials are AW, Officer AW. These people were mad at him because he's the one who's kicked Roseanne's legs out, and so the crowd was reacting to this officer. But my husband's like,
Yeah.
he should have never done that, but my husband was like, you also don't drag a police officer into the crowd and beat them, you know?
Absolutely not.
And so he was helping him, and then they moved Roseanne's body back up. And then as he's standing there, an officer thanks him for his help that day, twice. Says, "Hey man, thanks for all your help today. Really appreciate you."
Were any of the thank yous on camera?
All of them. This whole thing is on camera. The government will not play the audio. There's like, there's glitches, there's technical things. He has conversations with this officer, and then the whole crowd rushes up because they're so upset at what just happened. And he's stuck. His arm is broken. His shoulder is broken. And he's like, "I think I broke my shoulder," is what he tells this officer. This officer almost like wraps his arm around him to protect him because the crowd's pushing in at this point. Wraps his arm around him, is like, "Don't worry, I got you, you know, calm down, it's fine." The very end of the video, before it cuts off and he goes to get medical aid for his shoulder, the guy smacks him on the shoulder and is like, "Hey, I just want us in a good mood." That's what the officer says to him. Like, what? What does that even mean? It's the craziest comment.
And you saw that video?
Oh, I have it all.
I can get a copy of that?
Yeah, I can give you all the footage. Yeah. This is what they've used against
We
him.
have edited where it breaks down subtitles, and we
So you can
also
see
have
it.
raw.
Oh, please and thank you.
We have
yeah, I'll
both.
take both copies. Yeah.
But when he's talking to these guys, like this officer, they knew he was a sheriff. I mean, he had a sheriff's badge on, you know, and he tells them, I'm one of you, you know, and it's like 7 minutes of his life. That's all it is. 7 minutes from the time he steps in to falling down the stairs with this officer, to getting Roseanne's body, doing chest compressions, the officer thanking him, and then he's gone.
And he's gone. And his shoulder, you said he hurt his shoulder?
It was broke, so it was already broken. He was in a car accident 9 days prior to this.
Okay.
Should have never lived, rolled his truck 12 times. Coming home from work, being an officer, they held him over and he was coming home from work, fell asleep. And that's the only reason he went, because he would have been at work. If that accident didn't happen, he would have been at work on January 6th. So when he was at the line after they moved her body away, and he says he broke his shoulder, he asks, he wants help, right? I mean, he wants medical help for his shoulder, and he says, hey, can I get behind the line, because there was medical back there. That's where they had just removed Roseanne away. And the guy was like, no. My husband never stepped foot in the building. He was literally in the tunnel, and that's it. But he says, he wants help for his shoulder, and he's like, can I get behind the line? Can I get help? And there's a civilian that comes up, and the officer says, like, can you take him? He needs help. Take him to a medical tent.
And they did.
Yeah, that's it. He walks away. And then now it's not really funny, but I guess it kind of is he's walking away, and he's on the phone. He calls me right after this. I hadn't talked to him all day. You know, going to big rallies, being around a lot of people, there's no cell service at all. Well, he's walking away and he calls me. Well, that's his picture on the FBI website. He's on the phone with me. I told my family, I'm like, if they play that call in court, there's probably some colorful language in there, and I'm sorry in advance. It's crazy. It's just, you know, you don't ever think that this is going to happen. Not to Americans, not on our own soil, and certainly not to somebody you know. Right? I've told so many people that if you would have told me 2 years ago, or even right after January 6th, that this would be happening to our own people, I might have believed you, because I don't like the government. But I thought there would have been enough people like you and I, and especially the people in government, that would have said, we're not letting this fly. We'll go to the facility, we'll demand their release. Like, we're gonna be peaceful, but we're gonna make it known that this is not allowed. My husband's been behind bars 18 months. Hasn't even had trial. So the FBI came. I was not home when my husband was taken. I was on the West Coast for work, and I got this phone call from this random number, and I didn't answer it because I was working. And I tried to talk to my husband that morning. It was a Tuesday morning. And he had just gotten a new boss at work. And so I called him that morning because I thought he'd be on his way to work. Didn't answer. I was like, okay. I did really like a positive person, so I'm like, don't think anything of it. Like, he's going to work, whatever. Get on the phone with my mom, and I talked to her for a while because I had been up. I had got up at like 5 a.m. to go work out. And then I was like, Mom, I haven't got a hold of Colt. And she's like, I haven't talked to him either since last night. She talked to him on his way home from work the night prior. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll talk to him later, whatever. Well, I was going down to conference, and I called him because I knew it was like 10 o'clock. He had already been at work for a while. I tried to call again, didn't answer. I called immediately back, because then I'm like, something's not sitting right. They forwarded my phone call. And I knew at that point something was off, but I really was like, I'm not gonna be that wife. I was like, maybe he's in the meeting with his new boss or something like that. And then I go downstairs. I was down there for like 5 minutes, and I get this random phone call. And I didn't answer it. They called back immediately, didn't leave a voicemail. So I answered it the second time, and they said, this is David with the FBI. We just apprehended your husband. And I was like, okay. I don't really remember much of the phone call. It was like, honest to God, it was almost like an outer body experience where you're like, you have a million thoughts going through your mind. What's going on? And he was like, we're going to your house. Your husband handed over the garage door opener. And I was like, okay. I was like, I have 2 animals. I have 2 dogs. They're caged, but like my one dog is deaf. He has special needs. So please don't touch them, because, you know, I've heard horror stories where they shoot dogs. They, you know, I was like, there's nobody home. I had cameras in my house. I turned them on, and I got them starting to go through the house. They were on for about an hour and a half before they found them and turned them off. Well, they flipped them, so I couldn't get any footage after that. But they took a gun to my pantry. You know, walking around with massive weapons in my house. And I'm like, there's nobody. I told you on the phone, like, nobody's home. Nobody's going to jump out, you know, of the pantry and surprise you know. But they were there probably around about 5 hours. They had raided our house. So when I got off the phone with them, of course, I called my parents to let them know what was going on. And I hopped a flight home, and they left my house a complete disaster. I had to go home and like pick it all up, and I hadn't talked to him. So the FBI is the one who forwarded my phone call. And because my husband said, can I at least tell her what's going on? And they're like, no, we'll call her. So that's when the FBI called me and told me that they had apprehended him. Oh yeah, so they took 14 items from